even though they learn less from it. So enjoyment is important. As a parent, I feel like your enjoyment of a subject, your enthusiasm about it is an important factor. But it can't be the only determination for us of whether something's effective or not. If I let my kids do what they loved all the time, we'd be video games all the time, right? So, and this quote I just pulled out because the paper goes through all kinds of studies, elementary schools, colleges, chess players, even medical students. So this was one from the medical field that I think, when we're talking in terms of state standards and how that affects it. So they reported that all the PBL, project-based learning students that they did at some medical schools, they received better scores for their clinical performance. So basically they just put them right into the clinic earlier on, and they kind of had a mentor, and just by trial and error, they had to construct their own knowledge instead of kind of be given this foundation again of stuff. So they had good clinical mannerisms, right? They had experience in the clinics, but they also ordered significantly more unnecessary tests at a much higher cost per patient with less benefit. So basically they're just kind of stumbling around in the dark, trying to figure things out, maybe a little bit more than you would want. So again, and then it goes into, maybe some good mixes of fundamental knowledge, and then when they get to a certain level, then you start building upon the real world experience or the problem solving. So I'm gonna get in trouble for this slide. This is fodder for a great Tribune headline about parents and fear-mongering about communism, right? But the whole point of this research article is that literally decades and decades of controlled experiments have shown that the constructivist ideas aren't effective, and sometimes they're even damaging. And so I guess I'm just curious about why there are some appealing philosophies that sound good in theory, but haven't quite worked out, and why we keep returning to them over and over with this idea that it's a great theory, we just haven't implemented it correctly yet. Anyway, so then again, as a parent, my next thought is, what's the opportunity cost of moving to these standards? We talk a lot about what we're gonna get, but what are we missing? And this is a picture that references the story in the Bible of the mess of pottage that was sold for his birthright, right? And I guess my fear is that sometimes we don't realize what we've lost until it's gone. So these standards for me are not just about the science, they're about our birthright to be a self-governing people. My ability as a parent to direct and have influence over my child's education, we call it local control, but is giving up that worth whatever little benefit something I might get from more with it or current progressive standards. And so it's something to consider for that. And what are the subject areas that are not included? I'm hoping Vince will touch a little bit of this, but the Fordham review goes really in depth. But it comes down to things like climate change is mentioned 58 times, and circuit is mentioned once. I think cells are mentioned once in a lower grade, but no specific human body systems. When it talks about technology, they're talking about technology simulations of like global warming models and stuff. It's not really, we think we're teaching kids to be, future programmers or engineers. There's very little chemistry, no physics. And again, we've just lost the ability altogether for students when they get to the high school level to kind of branch off and maybe get a little more specialized in a certain area. We've kind of done this scrambled eggs approach to the science like we did with the math. So like with the math, we did, instead of algebra 1, algebra 2, trigonometry, calculus, kind of kept things together in an ordered way. They just kind of mixed everything up. And so we've done the exact same thing with science, and I think that it kind of prevents us from kids finding different areas of interest and aptitude and getting into it at a deep enough level where they're prepared for higher levels of work at the college level and into their career. And one dad in California said, he just said, I'm looking at these standards and I'm just thinking this is going to guarantee that no future engineer in America will have been born in America. So all of our future engineers will have to be imported from other countries, and he kind of wondered if that was intentional or not. But it's a concern to think about. And then the reason, what the guy in the speech says, what information do I have? And I said, do you have knowledge if you have to Google it? And the dirty word of the older style of instruction is that it's just rote memorization, right? And the word rote implies that it's meaningless. And, I've done that. I've crammed for a test, written it out on the test, and the next day if you asked me what I'd been tested on, I aced the test, and the next day I couldn't remember, right? So, but did I really know it? Did I memorize it? Did I take it with meaning? So I know that happens, but is all memorization rote? And like I mentioned in the physics example that was applied to computer engineering, I don't think that's true. I think when you do own the knowledge, when you've memorized it or taken it into your mind and you have that, then you can reapply it in other ways. So I don't like rote memorization, but I don't think it's fair to say when we've memorized certain facts that it's all rote or meaningless. So this is the next thing that came up in the hearing. What's wrong with the national standards and tests? First of all, one of the other state board members wanted to clarify these are not federal standards. She kind of gave Alyson a hard time for calling them national standards, and she said, I didn't say federal, I said national. But the point is, why have we not had national standards? Why have we typically in this country been opposed, very strongly opposed, and not just conservatives, for a long time, been opposed to national standards? And I think there's a couple of reasons, and this is my boogeyman, because I've personally been mocked, and I watched Alyson kind of be mocked, that if you're opposed to national standards, it's because you think there's some big bad boogeyman that's going to come and get you or your kids, or what I think that's really dismissing the principles that are underneath that. And so one of the principles is this idea of laboratories of democracy that it was a Supreme Court Justice Brandeis, I'm going to probably say his name wrong too, but he said in a legal decision that became, that this idea kind of came from, he said that a state may, if its citizens choose, serve as a laboratory and try novel social and economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country. So like I mentioned, the constructivist theory of education has been around since the 60s. They've tried it, failed it in a lot of different things, or it's kind of come up and down. The scariest part to me about the next generation science standards is that it's not limited to a school or a district or even one state. This is a push for the whole nation to put all of our eggs in one basket with this theory that doesn't have a good track record. And I think it's a really bad idea. And so local control has been a protection toward that in the past. The other idea of local control is, as a parent, who can I go to when I have a problem? In the past, when my kids had a problem or there was an issue in school, I could go talk to the teacher. If I couldn't resolve it with the teacher, I could go to the principal or even the local school board, and at the very worst, I could go to the state school board or the legislature or try to affect change. With nationalization of standards, there's nobody. I've tried with Common Core. I know other mothers have had this experience that once we're kind of got this ball rolling, it just becomes a big circle of finger pointing. Well, go talk to the state school board, go talk to your principal, go talk to the teacher, and nobody has accountability or a power to make a change in policy because we're kind of just on this train that's off now. I'll give you a specific example with the test. Who controls the test? So I was on the parent review panel for the SAGE test. that was introduced with the Common Core and math and language arts. And we went through a lot of questions, and we would find some that had errors or things that we thought the wording was really